Hi guys, we are going to talk about using technology to make writing accessible for diverse learners. I bet you could have read that for yourself. Anyway, this is going to be a really brief slideshow, just talking about some fun technology tools that you can use in your classroom, and also going over some of the basics about why it's super important for us to use technology in our teaching. I want to tell you that I am at a conference right now, and I just heard a presenter who did a study in a bunch of middle schools in Connecticut, and he found that the special ed teachers who were tasked with doing the most intensive reading intervention were still not using assistive technology in their classrooms. And this is a really important tool that can make a huge difference for our students. So we're going to look at ways to use assistive technology and also just technology in general to make writing more pleasurable and more accessible. So one of the big problems we have in teaching, particularly kids with disabilities, is learned helplessness. They have learned from years and years and years in the classroom that if they don't try, someone will come over and help them. And this manifests itself in a lot of different subject areas, but most intensively, I think, in writing. So how can we help overcome learned helplessness in writing? By reducing the cognitive load. The big deal about writing is that it has very, very, very high cognitive load, and technology can really help reduce that. Technology can reduce the demands on working memory because the students, for example, don't have to remember how to spell every word. The technology helps them with the spelling so they can concentrate on the content. They can focus on fewer elements at once. They don't have to worry about fine motor skills and spelling and all those other pieces that make the cognitive load so high. And you can choose technology so that it supports their areas of weakness. So if you have a student for whom spelling is a really big deal, Teach to Speech to Text might be a great tool for that child. Whereas for another child, spelling is not such a big issue, and just learning to use keyboarding effectively might be a great tool for that child. But no matter what tool you end up choosing, if it's appropriate for the student, it will really, really help motivate those students who are reluctant to write. So technology can be used in a variety of ways. You can use, as we said, speech to text and also text to speech. Let's listen to that reading instead of having to rely on just reading it on our own. Let's use all the input devices that we have. It can be used for research and it can be used for planning and brainstorming. And we're going to look at some tools for all of those things. And the reason why is because it also increases engagement. Kids love technology and they'll try harder when they can use technology as a tool to access the curriculum. So here are some of the things we're going to look at. We already talked about the first two. The third bullet is just strictly listening to text. And there are lots of different ways to do that. One of the tools that I'm really fond of is Learning Ally. Now, unfortunately, it's not free, but schools can get subscriptions to it pretty reasonably if they're only giving it to those students who have disabilities. And Learning Ally has this huge selection of texts on tape that the students can listen to. But it's not really tape, it's CD-ROM, it's on computer, but it's recorded text that they can listen to. Predictive text, of course, is the kind of thing that you get when you use your texting on your phone. You're texting away and the phone pops up and tells you, did you mean this word? Do you want to use this word next? And that is a tool that can be really helpful for kids who have trouble with vocabulary, who have trouble with spelling. It can be a really great tool for them. And then, of course, just typing features like spell check and grammar check, all those tools that we take for granted as people who are good at using technology. They need to be taught to kids, and they're particularly important for our population of kids. So let's take a second and talk about speech to text. It's a wonderful tool for kids with dyslexia, and in the old days, it cost thousands and thousands of dollars to get a speech to text tool in your classroom. Now you can get one by pulling your phone out of your back pocket, and teaching kids to use their phones as an assistive tool is a great thing to do. They not only will be able to be better writers and express themselves more efficiently, but they'll really love it. Speech to text is accessible to most kids from about grades 3 or 4 on. It's not accessible to all kids because there are some kids who have speech problems that make it hard for them to dictate. When they dictate into a device, it doesn't come up with the right words. So if a child has a significant speech impediment, they may not be able to use speech to text. And different kids develop at different rates in terms of their speech. So you may have some younger kids whose speech is not quite good enough yet to use speech to text. So you're going to have to take that on a case-by-case basis. But don't assume that kids know how to use speech to text, even though they have it on their phones. It needs to be explicitly taught and mastered. And there are a variety of ways this can be done. We're going to look at one really simple one right now. But first, let's talk about some tools. Siri is on iPads and iPhones, and Siri was kind of the turning point for speech to text. It was the place at which the technology grew enormously when they released Siri, whereas speech to text used to be not very accurate and very cumbersome to use. Now it works really well for almost everyone. So Siri is a great tool, and you can just open a note page or some kind of blank document and dictate right into it. I use it on my computer when I'm typing sometimes when my hands get tired. So it's got lots of applications. And basically Siri is just the Mac version of speech to text. Dragon Dictate used to be the big program that everyone used before Siri came along, and it was very expensive. Now there's a Dragon Dictate app that you can get for your phone or for your iPad or for any device, and it's very, very reasonably priced. And what I understand from teachers is that if you are going to use speech to text in a noisy classroom, Dragon Dictate works more effectively than some of the other tools. It is able to screen out the background noise and focus in on the voice of the child pretty effectively. So I would check that one out. It is really affordable now and available widely. CoWriter is another tool that used to be really, really expensive, and now it is much more affordable and comes as an app. It has both speech to text and text prediction built in, as well as some other tools, so it's definitely worth checking out in terms of having it in your classroom. If you have computers or iPads or other devices in your classrooms, you might want to check out CoWriter as something to use with those devices in your classroom. Okay, so now we're going to look at a really simple way to teach speech to text. And I have to tell you that my students taught this to me. I didn't teach this to them. They came up with it because it's really logical. We know that we need to give our students practice in using spoken punctuation when they dictate into a device. And you can do that by having them read from independent level text. So this is a paragraph that I took off of News ELA, and it's written at a pretty low level. I might use this paragraph with, let's say, a fifth grader that I wanted to teach to use speech to text. And what I would do is I would model for him reading the paragraph and saying all the punctuation out loud. Like this. People eat fast food all day, period. On a normal day, 23% of Americans get fast food for breakfast, period. Okay, now I've just modeled it for him. Now I'm going to do it with him. So he and I are going to read the next part together. For lunch, comma, 44% have fast food, period. Then 42% do the same for dinner, period. Now we've done it together. Now I'm going to let him do it on his own. Another 23% get a snack from a fast food place, period. Many Americans are eating fast food more than once a day, period. Okay, you get the idea. And obviously, it probably wouldn't happen that fast. But over the course of several lessons, you could use some text like this to really teach a child to use spoken punctuation when he or she is dictating into a device for speech-to-text support. And they get really excited as they watch the words appear on the screen, and even more excited as they see the capitalization happening automatically after they say the periods or question marks out loud. So that's just one way to teach speech to text, but it's a really good one and really easy. I really recommend you try it out. So what we're going to do now is look at some really fun technology tools across the grade levels that are aligned to the Common Core standards. And these are all things you can use in your classroom really easily for free. So let's start with grade 1. This is a grade 1 Common Core writing standard. Write narratives in which they recount 2 or more appropriately sequenced events, include some details regarding what happened, use temporal words to signal event order, and provide some sense of closure. Okay, so we're looking at sequencing, details, temporal words, and those are words about order, like first, middle, and last, or first, then, after. So sequencing, details, temporal words, and a sense of closure. So I'm going to show you the Timeline app from readwritethink.org. Readwritethink.org is a free website created by the National, I can't think of what they're called now, but it's one of the big reading organizations. And they have a thing called the Timeline that's really fun and free to use. So here is an example of a timeline I made on readwritethink.org. It's called My Sunday Adventure, and you can see there are 5 events, and they are sequenced. And the main ideas are in the big words. So you see breakfast, swings, ducks, home. So that helps me conceptualize and brainstorm the order of events, in other words, the sequencing. The next part of the standard asks me to include some details, and to use temporal words to signal the order. So look at what I wrote on each of these timeline elements. First, we went to breakfast. I had pancakes. Then we went to the park. I went on the swings. We fed the ducks. Last, we went home. It was a fun day. So you can see that I added second sentences to add a little bit more detail, and I have the temporal words embedded in there, and the timeline helps me put it in order. And the sense of closure, it was a fun day. And then the program allows me to put pictures in. So it's a really easy, fun way for kids to work on sequential writing. And you can use it as young as first grade. Okay, so here's a third grade standard. Conduct short research projects that build knowledge about a topic. So there's a program called, or a website called Animoto.com. It makes little short animated slideshows, and there's a free version and a paid version. The only difference is that the free version, you get a watermark on it, and you have fewer choices of things. But it's super intuitive and easy to use. I use the free version all the time. So what I'm going to do is play you one of the slideshows I made. Now, I have to turn the music off because it gave me the option of using a Beatles song, which I did. But if I try to upload it onto YouTube, it won't take it because it's illegal for me to upload that song onto YouTube. So you're not going to hear the music, but just know that there is music on this slideshow that I'm turning off. Rocky Road. So this is a slideshow about the characteristics of mammals. All mammals have backbones. Mammals have hair or fur, and I picked pictures to go with it. Mammals feed their babies milk. Mammals are warm-blooded. And then I have a summary. I could have put more text on the slides, but you can see that I could have put more text on the slides, but you can see that it did allow me to conduct short research projects. It gave me knowledge about the topic. I was able to do sort of a beginning, middle, and end. So it's a really easy way to get little kids doing research and turning it into something exciting for them. Others that you could use would be iMovie, which on computer is really hard and complex, but is much, much easier on the iPad. So if you have access to an iPad or two, iMovie is a great tool for getting kids to do research projects. You can also do a recorded slideshow, which is kind of what I'm doing right now using PowerPoint. Another way to do those kinds of short research projects is Pinterest. And Pinterest is cool because you can kind of do the research and your project at the same time. It's very flexible, and you can make your project private, or you can share it with the world. You can also link to other people's boards about the same topic. So this one is the same topic, what's a mammal? And you'll see on the left there, I have the question, what is a mammal? And then I have down below, I have mammals have backbones. And this Pinterest allows me to write a little bit more. And this actually, I pinned it from somebody else's Pinterest. So I went out and found the appropriate elements to show each of these 4 things about mammals and pin them onto my board. So they have backbones. Above it you'll see they're warm-blooded. That's pinned from somebody's board. Mammals feed their babies milk. That's pinned from somebody else's board. Mammals have hair or fur. So Pinterest is another great way to have kids doing research projects. It's free. It's easy to use. And then you can link to other people's boards. So here are some other boards on mammals that I linked to. Grade 5, a grade 5 standard is to compare and contrast 2 or more characters, settings, or events in a story or drama, drawing on specific details in the text. So I'm using Voki to do this. Voki creates animated characters, and oh my gosh, kids love it. We're using this in our high school study, and the kids absolutely adore it. There's a free version. It's very easy to use, and the upgrade is really cheap. It's only $2.50 a month, so you can literally, for less than $35, have a subscription to this that your class can use. So here's what it looks like. So I wanted to do a Voki comparing and contrasting 2 characters from the Hunger Games in order to satisfy that 5th grade standard. So what I did was I picked the characters Effie and Haymitch, and then I chose avatars that I think that look pretty much like what those characters look like, and you can add glasses, you can change their clothes, you can add jewelry, that kind of thing. You can tell I'm using the free version of Voki because it has the logo. If you upgrade, you don't get the logo. So then what you do is you have your students write what that character would say about themselves, and then you choose a voice, and it automatically plays that character saying whatever you wrote.
I am Effie Trinket. I like to be noticed. You can tell by the clothes I wear and the color of my hair. Underneath though, I am kind, and I really care about Katniss. I want to take care of her.
I am Haymitch Abernathy. I care about Katniss too, but sometimes I get very frustrated with her. Also, I don't want anyone to know that underneath my rough exterior is a kind person, so I act mean most of the time.
So that's Voki, and you can use it a lot of different ways, but it's really wonderful for helping kids dig a little bit deeper into characters. They have to script it first, so that's what motivates them to do the writing. Hang on 1 second. Okay. Another way to explore the same standard is through readwritethink.org. So this is that same website that we just talked about, and they have another program on it that allows you to create Venn diagrams, and they're fun because you can embed notes, so the students not only create their Venn diagram, but they write about it in the notes. So I'm going to show you what we've got here. So this is again comparing Effie and Haymitch, and you'll see in the middle of the Venn diagram I have kindness and proud. They both have that in common, and right now I'm about to write another one. So it says vain. Effie is very vain. She cares most about her clothes and her hair. And then I click save, and it makes a little vain label and puts it on the Venn diagram. Now, you can do as many labels as you want and put them where they go on the Venn diagram. So here's another one about Haymitch. It says troubled. Haymitch is very troubled. He drinks a lot, and he is mostly mean. Oh, he's mostly unhappy, sorry. So I write about Haymitch, why I think he's troubled. It creates the little label for me, and I put it on there. Now, I can double click on any of these little labels, and it will open the box that shows my notes. So this gives the students a chance to actually write some meaningful stuff about the characteristics that they're assigning to each of these characters. And that's really great. And then you have a chance to save it. And you can save it in a variety of different formats. If you save it as a PDF, then you won't be able to see the embedded notes. So that's not going to be super helpful to you as a teacher. You won't be able to see what your student did. But if they save it as a draft on their computer under their login, you can reopen it in the website and see the notes. So that becomes a really nice tool for you to use as a teacher. And again, that's readwritethink.org, and that's their Venn diagram. Grade 7, one of the grade 7 language standards is to choose language that expresses ideas precisely and concisely, recognizing and eliminating wordiness and redundancy. So I think Twitter is a great way to do this. You know, Twitter has a character limitation. So by virtue of its very nature, Twitter asks you to be precise and concise. By virtue of the fact that Twitter is a very, very popular social media tool, it's motivating for kids, for 7th graders particularly. So having them practice writing to post on Twitter is a great way to practice this idea of precise and concise use of language. So here's an example. Students choose a topic relevant to their coursework or personal interests, and then they write a thesis statement that expresses their opinion. Then you make them revise and clarify it until it's short enough to tweet, but it still has to include all the important information. Now, several years ago, this used to be a lot harder than it is now because Twitter doubled its character limitations, but it's still pretty challenging. So this example I actually did in the old days. The thing I'm reporting on is that 11 Atlanta educators were sent to jail for cheating on standardized tests. So as my student then, I write this thesis. If educators are cheating on standardized tests, that shows the tests carry too much power. We should eliminate standardized testing in favor of measures that really show what students know and how well teachers teach and inspire their students. So nowadays, this would actually fit. I could tweet this whole thing. But in the old days, I couldn't. So I had to edit it down without losing the main ideas. So here's the edited version. If educators are cheating on standardized tests, tests carry too much power. We need measures that illuminate how teachers teach. So you can see that taking somebody's writing and then editing it down to fit in 140 characters is pretty challenging. And then if you have permission from their parents, they can actually create a Twitter account and actually tweet what they wrote, which is incredibly motivating for students. So you can see right here, I tweeted my thesis statement. Students will love thinking about thesis statements and writing them concisely and precisely if you allow them to tweet them afterwards. In grade 9, we have some standards around the function of language in different contexts. So making effective choices for meaning or style and writing for a range of tasks and purposes and audiences. And a great way to practice this is to have kids practice writing for different audiences on technology. So how would you write about your feelings about the Supreme Court hearings on Facebook? How would that be different from how you'd write it in an email to your employer? And how would that be different than a blog or a text or a newsletter? So yeah, we always talk about different writing for different contexts, but if you make them meaningful to kids' lives by choosing actual technology tools that kids care about, they'll be much more interested in learning about the way language functions. So you might have students choose a topic and then they read about it on some various sites and then they write a short opinion piece about the topic, including some evidence from those sites. And then they choose 3 formats. So I'm going to choose Facebook, an email, and a blog. And now I'm going to adjust the style and the voice for each format and write that same thing 3 times and actually put it on a blog or actually put it on Facebook. So that not only are we asking kids to learn how to write their opinions in a relevant manner, but then we're actually giving them a chance to express themselves publicly. And that's a big deal. And this is, by the way, an opportunity for you to talk about being kind to people online, in online formats, civility, which is a really important topic to talk about to kids. And again, in 11 and 12, blogs or Twitter are great places to develop claims and counterclaims and give evidence for each. So it makes it meaningful. Kids care about it. They feel like they're really expressing themselves and not just writing papers that nobody ever sees. And that can make a huge difference in terms of motivation. So you can have them choose an article. So these are 2 different sites where you can get environmental blogs and political blogs, where students can actually post their opinions and read other people's opinions, and that's really important. And then you give them some criteria. They have to use evidence from the article, they have to have at least 2 other sources, they have to make claims and counterclaims and present 2 perspectives. And by the way, if you can get your students presenting 2 different perspectives, you're affecting the impact of social media on the next generation, where usually we only hear one perspective and it's very, very bad for society. So think about that. That's pretty cool. So just to wind up, Technology gives you opportunities for both engagement and structure. It can help students narrow their focus and be more specific in the writing. The structure of the technology helps them focus on the ideas and the content. So for example, Voki, by creating those two characters, it helps them really focus on the idea that I'm thinking about characters. It can compensate for spelling and fine motor issues. And that, of course, lowers the cognitive load, which we know is really an important element for making writing more accessible for our students. And honestly, they can engage reluctant writers like nothing else. You will find that your students will actually want to write when it turns into a video or a talking character, or when they get to post their opinions on a blog. So I hope this has been helpful. I hope you'll try some of these tools out. Hopefully you'll even try them out in your writing assignment, because feel free to take anything that you learned from this and use it in your assignment. All right, everybody. Thanks a lot.